Welcome to the DTF Film Sessions. This is episode number 3. CJ Stroud, the quarterback from Ohio State. I'm Max Dean here with Nick Merriam, our director of draft content and scouting over at Defiant Takes Football, and he's going to help me break down. Look, I say help. He's really going to do all the work, but we're going to break down CJ Stroud, one of the top prospects in the 2023 NFL Draft, quarterback out of Ohio State. And the question is he a player that goes number 1 overall? Is he a player that ends up falling to 7 or 8? Only the draft will tell us the answer to that, or at least some information that comes out shortly prior to it. But I think if you're looking for size, if you're looking for arm talent, if you're looking for playing on a big stage, he has all of that. If you question, was the offense a little bit easy because of the talent that they had there and who they had to go up against? Those are realistic questions as well. Somebody's going to fall in love with this guy. It just depends on which team in the top 10 it is. And then ultimately, are they already picking high or do they trade up to get him? Who knows? But when we're actually looking at CJ Stroud, what is it that stands out to you?
So it's a couple of things. He has the best ball trajectory, like both power and touch of any quarterback, maybe potentially that I have scouted in the past few years. Like it's not quite like the anticipation to touch the ball over defenders, and it's not quite like the ability to have the arm strength and arm talent, but it's a little bit of both, right? Like he makes these throws 30 yards that dip over safeties at a faster speed than anybody else can. And that is completely a natural talent thing. It's something that he uses to his advantage in his game very well. And it's probably, like, if we talk about his physical tools, like his number 1 plus, right, is that ball trajectory. He does a good job with ball placement as a bonus on that. Like, he is not just like throwing these balls willy-nilly. I think Anthony Richardson also does a good job with this, but his accuracy downfield is inconsistent. Stroud consistently puts the ball both downfield and short accurately, and in a place where a receiver can catch the ball and then pick up yards after the catch. So this is probably the most accurate quarterback in this draft class. He is, maybe to a lesser extent, not too different from Bryce Young because of maybe that being his top trait, but I think the improvisation is a little bit lesser. I think the size is more of a certainty with him. And that's why I think some teams might even have him number 1 on their boards. But there are questions about this offense, and we'll kind of dive into that a little bit. It maybe hurt Justin Fields in the league. But there are also some things I think Stroud does better than Justin Fields, just in terms of reading the defense, that we'll talk about as well.
All right. So let's get into it here. I kind of have like a comp in terms of the way that he throws the ball and how accurate it is and the touch that he has on it. But I'm going to wait till the end just to sort through these clips to see if I really fully feel that way, because it's not something I want to throw around willy-nilly. But what do we have here?
So Georgia, we've already said in the last video for Jalen Carter that they do a lot of weird things defensively as something falls off on Max's decks. We'll move on. We'll get through this adversity. We'll be all right. They show too high a lot with the ball in the hash, and it's really like a single high look, and they're just trying to confuse quarterbacks, and it works really well at the collegiate level. In the NFL, this is not something you can do because of the hashes, but this is actually a single high cover 3 look, even though there's 2 safeties up, and Stroud knows that. And he's going to, play to initially the cover three beater. But what does happen on this play is they're motioning into a 3-by-1, as you can see that receiver's already on the run. And when you motion to 3-by-1, a lot of defenses will check into cover 6, because what that does is it effectively moves your cover 3 over. So you're playing, half quarter. It would be the way to call it on this play, because it's going to be half bottom of the screen and then 2 quarters covered up top to play to the strength of those 3 receivers. And you're going to see Stroud initially kind of use his shoulders to help draw the defense over and look for the cover 3 beater. But he's also got kind of a backside deep out with an inside stemming leverage. And what that does against cover 6 is when your corner is covering that deep half, he needs to retreat to his middle field, or quarter field technically, but middle field of that half landmark. And then now your receiver is in a spot where he can bring that corner inside and then bend back out to what will effectively be a cover 2 beater. And Stroud, pre-snap, knows all this is happening, processes it well, does a good job to flip his shoulders back across, and then make a nice touch throw, which will be a theme on his film, to this bottom of screen receiver who you see stems inside, breaks back out, and then Stroud makes this throw to space effectively. Good footwork, gets his hips around, and puts the ball in a place where his receiver is protected, and the ball is protected from a turnover as well.
Nice. All right. I don't know. We can revisit that just once from the all-22 version. But yeah, nice placement. I mean, I think the nice thing about that is that he's not trying to lead his receiver upfield. He's not trying to get cute, even though there's space. He just puts it where it needs to be and just moves on to the next play.
And I think you could make an argument this should be faster at the NFL level. I'm not super concerned about that just because you see signs of him recognizing where that ball should go, and that's in itself complicated enough that I think.
I mean,
speaking.
Yeah, it's also, again, let's just look at it. This is said this before, for some of these really good top programs like Alabama with Bryce Young, you're not going to see a pocket cleaner than this ever in the NFL.
But
and
should also be said,
good, so.
This game was not a game where he had a lot of clean pockets. In fact, quite the opposite.
That's fair. On this particular play, it's nice. But all right.
Okay. So the special appeared for CJ Stroud in this game, and that we did not know if he had improvisational skill. In fact, it didn't look like he played well under pressure most of his time in college. And Georgia obviously has put all these defensive line in the NFL draft. They've been high picks. This was a game where he had to be great against the blitz and great against really just four-man rushes that were beating their offensive line. And you saw it. We saw tons of signs of this, of his ability when the game breaks down to make throws. He gets pressured. We talked about this in the Bryce Young video. Steps up through the pocket, right? Something that you like to see. And I think a lot of all the top four quarterbacks in this draft class do a pretty decent job of stepping up as like their first reaction to pressure. Kind of sets them aside from anyone else in this draft, but that's how that works. And then identifying open receivers downfield. There are multiple throws in this game where he does a good job of keeping his eyes downfield. There are some plays where he doesn't, and it gets him into trouble. But in this particular case, he does. He keeps his eyes downfield. He probably could scramble for some yards, but he decides to make the throw. And then, again, we're going to see this kind of ball trajectory, touch accuracy with throw power that he has, where he can make this ball fit into a tight space of the field downfield, but also get it over a linebacker's head into the correct portion of the field here. This is, again, avoid the offensive lineman, nice footwork, good agility. And then his feet aren't set either. And this is a great throw just to be like running and avoiding a defensive lineman. We kind of
pretty crazy.
There are some like ridiculous plays in this game and really the Michigan game too, which we're going to look at a little bit. But avoids 1 sack, avoids 2 sacks, really avoids 3 sacks on this play, but we wouldn't give him like broken tackle. I don't think on this last one just because he throws it to get rid of the ball. But, the trust in his receiver is a big thing. We know that he can kind of build those connections with his playmakers in the NFL. He does this very well with Harrison all year. And this is just one of these plays that kind of, if you're Georgia, like against most teams, like you've got the sack, you're good. This is why Ohio State was in this game. It's just Stroud made plays like this throughout all 60 minutes.
This is crazy. So where he is right now, he's got to regain his balance. He sees that he has an open guy down the field. He's got to regain his balance and get that ball out on a trajectory where the DB cannot close on it, but also he's got to get the ball out before he loses this throwing lane that's open with this defender and receiver that are locked up right down here. This is pretty
He's not even
pretty wild.
This is not like an open receiver. This is just throwing him to space.
Yep. Okay. So my comp is, in terms of the way that the ball moves when he throws, it does kind of remind me of Justin Herbert. He doesn't have quite the same size, but the way the ball moves with touch and velocity, it reminds me of the way that Herbert throws and the way that the ball just gets accurately where he intends it to. And, like he might, I don't want to get into a sidebar about Herbert, but it looks like that, and I think that's really what sells you on him as a prospect, the way that he can do that. I mean, you can't expect him to necessarily do it as consistently as Herbert does once he gets to the NFL, but when you see that, it's tempting. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, I could see that matchup pretty well, actually. And I think maybe his touch is a little better than Herbert's, but he doesn't quite have the throw power of Herbert. But yes,
He doesn't have the same, like, the height really helps as well with Herbert.
Yes.
One of the reasons he can just rip that ball like that so consistently is because he does have a little bit more of a leverage advantage, like, over some of the other players. But again, I don't want this to be a sidebar on Herbert, but it reminded me of him. Anyway, let's go on.
Ball trajectory does look similar. All right, so I had to pull out an example of, I think, how this Ohio State offense can be a tough transition at times for quarterbacks. And I think it maybe got a little overrated with Fields. It has affected him clearly, but I think that might be more on Fields than the offense itself. But so this is Georgia again, like giving us an alignment that is very strange, right? Like it's open field. There's an extra that the corners are playing way off, like deeper than the safeties itself, but almost as deep. They're all playing deep. It's almost 5 across in the backfield. We don't know what coverage they're running. And I think a safe assumption in this situation is a cover 6 or a cover 3 variant, because you would expect, kind of based on the way that the safeties are standing, the way the corner is kind of off and inward at the top or outward at the top of the screen, that it's zone. If it's man, like you just get the ball out quickly. I think in this situation, because of the down and distance, like you're not expecting especially man coverage, just because if that were the case, like you're giving your receivers a chance to like just burn a flat-footed corner right off the bat. It's just like there's too many easy ways to beat man in this situation, as much as it doesn't seem like it. But Georgia's presenting 3 down linemen, like they're probably not bringing a whole lot of heat. There's a few reasons why I would think it's zone here. But Stroud knows that. He figures it out. The issue is because of the strength of the formation, he gets predetermined locked into the bottom of the screen where they're running a smash concept. We've got a curl and a corner route from the slot receiver. And he is looking for that curl player, hoping that the corner will be off enough that he can just make that throw. And it's around the sticks, which is crazy. Like Georgia's playing off in their weight, so it's not even really that far of a down and distance. Like they could throw this underneath route and get the first down. The issue is the corner crashes down and takes the throw away. And Stroud just doesn't have a place to go with the ball, and he gets sacked because his predetermined read was to go bottom of the screen, and he didn't have like a backup plan, so he just gets sacked. What does happen here is it ends up being cover 3, but like because of the hashes, again, you're shifted over. So it's almost like you have a normal middle field open situation where a seam route down the middle of the field from this tight end at the top of the screen is open, and he gets that look. That throw is there, but he never considers it really. He kind of peaks, and I wish that this is a throw that you would see him throw more often, but I think because of what he sees pre-snap, he gets off of it way too quickly, and instead of throwing to space, where he would probably just lead him to like the A of the Peach Bowl logo, that would have been a big gain. And I think because of the way this offense is designed, the way they want him to like kind of look at the way Georgia's aligned and just say, okay, well, smash concept 2v2, guys probably open when they sink one deep. It's a high-low read. Do that. It's a safer option, but he passes up on this throw here. And
maybe trusting
it's not actually the safe option because he gets sacked.
Right. I think also there's just maybe a little bit too much of an assumption that his guys are going to get open. You know what I mean? That's something that we've seen with quarterbacks coming out of Ohio State, where it's like, you know, you're reading your own player more so than you're reading the defense at times. Right.
All right. Play number 4. So people loved this play call. This is Georgia's going to show like cover 4 initial developing of the play, and ends up being like a deep cover 2 where they're really just trying to prevent big plays, but they're out of cover 2. So it's like the 5 under defenders are back enough that you're still like keeping things in front of you. Almost like it's like cover 2 over, which is not really a thing, but it's almost like what's going on here. Ohio State has this brilliant play call where they bring receivers on corner routes to drag out the middle field, and then they trail, I believe, the running back underneath, and he's wide open up the middle for a touchdown. But it's a difficult throw to make, and this is just going to show off kind of the touch accuracy that Stroud possesses. The play call is a predetermined throw, almost like that he knows this guy's going to be open. This is a really tough throw to make. He gets it up and down over the running back in stride, or over the linebacker in stride with the running back for a touchdown before the half. We saw Jalen Hurts make a couple throws like this in the Super Bowl that were fantastic. In cases there were times where he didn't put it in a place where even the receiver could be in stride to score a touchdown. And that's just like an elite ability to throw this ball with enough speed that not only can the safety not close then back on it, but also with enough trajectory, the linebacker can't make a play. This is 40 yards downfield. This is a very difficult throw. There's a very small percentage that this ball is thrown exactly where it needs to be a touchdown, because obviously he's not in the end zone when he catches it. But he manages to make it happen. It's a great catch by the running back too. But overall, this is the type of throw that I think sets them aside.
Yeah. Yep. So just looking at this again, just that I can show people with some of the graphics here. All right. So you got this receiver and this receiver who are basically stretching the field horizontally, leaving this open gap in the middle of cover 2, because now both of these safeties have to respect these outside threats here. But again, if you don't put it exactly where it needs to be, they will have time to turn it around and close on that. But also, I mean, at the speed with which this running back is running down the field, putting it where he can actually go up and get it is pretty impressive as well. I mean, it's not the easiest catch for a running back to make that far down the field, so you don't really have a lot of flexibility. But yes, this is a very nice throw. He also doesn't push it too hard. It's a very patient throw.
It's a catchable ball.
All right.
Okay, so this is again just an arm show-off play here, and I'm throwing it in here because it's about as good of a showing of accuracy from touch and throw speed as you'll see from his tape. This is just a beautiful throw. The mechanics are a little bit funky, but there's really tight coverage, and he just fits this ball on the sideline perfectly. This is as good of a throw as I saw from Stroud on tape, outside of the Harrison touchdown, which occurs in this Michigan game. This is one maybe that you haven't seen on Twitter. I might share it later because I just think it's a brilliant throw, and I just wanted to throw it in here.
All right. See what we got.
So
you can already see because he's falling away from it.
Yep. Wish you would step into it maybe a little bit more. That might make this ball even travel faster, and that's something you can work on at the NFL level. A lot of guys struggle with that early on, but you can see where he's going here. It's the corner route. The guy's already breaking, but he's got a defender right on him. This ball needs to be layered in over his shoulder correctly, in a way that the safety can't make a play. He's a little bit off. I don't think he's going to make a play at this point, but he's expecting the safety to be in position. So where this ball is delivered on the sideline, and I believe he allows his receiver to get out of bounds, is just ridiculous.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure why he leans away from it. That is kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a little... and there's some mechanical things we could dive into. A lot of Case QBs. I think Stroud generally has good mechanics. I think maybe the pressure in this game as well was a problem at times, and it affected, the way he's throwing. He's kind of bailing a little bit from this pocket. You see there's kind of a sign of pressure in the middle there for the defensive tackle, but still, just for an off-balance quarterback, that's a ridiculous throw.
Yeah, it is. I think that's definitely something that you want to work on cleaning up, because we've seen a lot of guys who can do this in college, but once they get to the NFL, they fall back on this. And if you get inconsistent, even if you had good accuracy in college, sometimes it just doesn't stick. So it's something I would definitely want to work on. But the placement of that is extremely, extremely impressive.
And I think what's good for him is most of the teams drafting quarterbacks this year seem to have pretty good offensive line play. So that'll help, I think. Ohio State has had good O-lines, but they haven't been necessarily good enough to match up with the best edge players in the country yet. Something that they'll – even interiors are more of a problem, really, because they've had good tackle play. Whatever. Moving on. All right, so this is an understanding of leverage of your receiver as well that we see in this play. So this is cover 6, and Stroud comes off his initial read when he sees this. He's a high-low on the bottom of the screen when he initially sees the cover 6. You know that because you have a deep half receiver, you've got a corner, you've got an out route, a quick out, we call it speed out. So when he initially sees that we've got 2 quarters players on one side, he is immediately coming off his read. And this has to be an extremely quick read to the left side of the field. You need to identify here, throwing it to, you're reading kind of this corner to see if he sinks to that corner route or if he comes down to the flat. Often it ends up being the speed out because the corner is more likely to want to give up that and rally up and make a tackle. This is actually just a normal. I don't know why I thought it was a speed out. But because the corner sits, you kind of get 2 one-on-ones The thing here that gives this throw away is the deep half defender is turned around, right? Like he is in a position where right now his butt is facing the receiver. Like he is not in a place to play this ball. So if you throw this right now, there's a chance the safety doesn't even see the throw happen. And it's a very safe throw because of that. And Stroud recognizes this, quick triggers the ball, gets it to where it needs to be, first down.
I think, you'd love to see a little bit more of the anticipation on the throw there, because he doesn't really get the ball out till the break is already fully made.
Yes.
And I think that's like quintessentially what people worry about bringing quarterbacks out of Ohio State, is whereas in the NFL,
I think
theoretically you can wait, but like you want to get that throw out when he's breaking. Whereas with Ohio State, you're kind of always trusting that your guy's going to get open. So you're waiting to see it a little bit more often than you'd like.
I agree. I think it's something that comes in the NFL for a lot of guys. I think like Bryce Young is maybe the one prospect we've seen going all the way back to Trevor Lawrence, who has the ability to kind of throw the ball before breaks consistently. Like guys do it. There are throws where Stroud does it. But there's levels to this, right? There's seeing the open receiver and throwing it to him. There's the best level of this, which is throwing a receiver open like before his break, which is like an NFL throw. And there's identifying where the receiver will be open and leading him to space, but he might already be starting his break. And I think Stroud kind of sits in that realm in the middle. Young is in like the really good, like throwing receivers open. Richardson and Levis are more in the, I need to see the open receiver to throw it to him. And I don't think this is like seeing the open receiver. I think he does identify, and you can tell because he leads into the sideline, right? If he were just throwing to an open receiver, he would throw it to a spot. And that's when I talk about ball placement. Like he puts this on the chalk almost, and that's valuable to an extent.
The other thing to be fair is that sometimes the receiver doesn't have like a necessarily a set landmark, and it's more about a feel thing. And so you kind of got to wait to see where their break is. So you don't know for sure, but I would love to see him basically, already stepping into this throw right now.
Yes.
But again, we're not getting perfection here. This is still a fairly high level read and throw. So,
and that is ultimately why the only quarterback in this draft that I have a clear year one starting grade for is Bryce Young. That is, I think, what separates him from Stroud and these other guys. Stroud is going to be a guy that is a little behind. Like he's going to be a top year two starting quarterback grade. Like year two, you feel really good about him. Richardson and Levis, we'll get into them. We'll talk about how they fit into that kind of grading scale. But the way it worked for us at SIS, it was 7.0 and higher is year one. I have Young at like a 7.1. 6.7 to 6.9 is year two starter, and I think Stroud is a 6.9. So he's at the top of that, right? But his ability to overcome what you just pointed out is going to be important to maybe push him to a ceiling of getting into that year one starting quarterback realm, as if he can do that immediately. And there's some signs that maybe he can, but it's not consistent enough that I can be certain about it as an evaluator.
All right. That's going to do it for our third DTF film session of the offseason. We will be back over the next couple of days. I don't know when this will come out, probably after Thursday, meaning that you will be able to find our live stream or podcast where we're talking about all the quarterback prospects, and then the AFC North offseason preview as well. So you can go back and check that out. And coming up, who do we want to do next? Do we want to give a little teaser, or do you want to wait?
Let's say Levis. Let's say Levis is next because he's the quarterback 3 on most people's boards, right? Or top 3. I guess some people are higher.
Okay. All right. Will Levis coming at you in the near future, so stay tuned for that, guys. You can find me at TheMaxDean on Twitter. You can find Nick at Nick with Sports. You can find Defiant Takes Football at Defiant Takes on all social media platforms. And then check out the site. We have articles and player profiles up as we speak. We will see you all very soon.